Hi, my name is Michael, and I am in a desperate situation. All because I couldn't just pass by one girl. I had gotten into college, and my father had rented an apartment for me in the city. I got a little lost and came across a group of homeless people, and I saw her among them. She looked my age, 17 to 19 years old, small in stature, with a thin face, and she had such big sad eyes. I even felt ashamed that I had just left a restaurant and was on my way to my warm bed. She was beautiful, but I remember her sad look. Well, you understand. I couldn't get her out of my head the whole next day and went the same way home from class to give her at least 50 bucks. She was very happy, although she didn't say anything. She seemed very modest, even downtrodden. 2 days later, I decided to give her some more money, but on this day, she was especially sad. She seemed to be afraid of something. I scolded myself for being so concerned about her. What could I do for her anyway? The next day, I went back again, but she was gone. Several days passed before I found her near my house. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying for a long time, and she was trembling all over. I told her that if she wanted to, she could stay the night and leave in the morning. She went with me. I wondered how she had found me. It turned out that she had followed me before. I was glad she did. She hesitantly walked around the apartment. I ran a bath for her and started to walk out. But then she told me that she was afraid to be alone. She was acting strangely. I heard her get undressed, climb into the water, and start singing something to herself. And then she asked me to help her. It sounded so simple that I lathered her back with no problem. And then I helped her shave her legs, because she turned out to be very clumsy. At one point, I suddenly felt a desire, but scolded myself for thinking something like that. I forgot to tell you her name. It was Kelly. After the bath, Kelly put on my shirt. It was like a dress for her. She looked really good in it. I put her on my bed. That night, I was woken up by a terrible scream. Kelly was crying in her sleep. I shook her awake. She clung to me and fell asleep again. The next morning, I tried to find out what had happened to her and what had scared her so much, but she didn't say anything. I invited her to stay for one more day. After school, I went to buy some new clothes for Kelly. My father gives me a decent pocket money, so it was no problem. I lingered in the underwear section. I bought her a beautiful set, and again, caught myself imagining how seductive she would look in it. Kelly was delighted by what I had bought her. I asked her to try it on. I was wondering if everything would fit because she's so tiny. Oh yes, everything fit. I was speechless. She looked fantastic. And then it happened. I didn't want Kelly to go. I was drawn to her. She seemed so pure and fragile. But I wanted to know her story, and she had never told me anything about herself. I knew that something bad had happened to her in the past. I also thought that I could talk to my father and we could help her with her education. I really wanted her to get back on her feet. I couldn't study with Kelly at home because she was such a distraction. I had tamed a homeless girl. She would throw her things everywhere, didn't cook or clean, and might not even flush after using the toilet. She spent days on the internet or in front of the TV, but I was able to look past all that for those hot nights we had. But those soon ended, and I didn't know what was wrong. One day, I was walking home past the place where I had met Kelly. People started shouting after me. Did you take the orphan in? Is all your stuff safe? And then she said, look, she will chew you up and spit you out. You are not the first. Kitty, bring me some coffee. I didn't want to believe it, even though the frightened girl that I had known was gone. And then something amazing happened that opened my eyes. The Wolf of Wall Street was on TV, and Kelly said, Margaret Robbie is so amazing in this. After this movie came out, I tried to look like her at graduation. You couldn't have graduated then, I told her. I was 11 years old when this movie came out. So, how old are you? I asked her. She was silent, but then freaked out and told me that she was 25? And that my endless questions bothered her, and she was going to sleep. I was shocked. I thought we had love, but it turned out that the Kelly I liked just didn't exist. This one was just using me, spending my dad's money and hanging out on TikTok all day and eating popcorn. I asked her to leave, but she pretended not to hear me. Then I packed her things and told her to get out. And then I became convinced that Kelly had really lived on the street too long. I put her things out of the door and put $100 on top. She suddenly sprinted towards me and jumped on me. She looked completely crazy. I just had to grab her and throw her out. While I was doing that, she swore at me like a real street girl. The neighbors even threatened to call the police. I decided that it would be better to move to another apartment. Has something like that ever happened to you? Don't be a romantic like me if you don't want to get mixed up in something like that. Well, this one has come to an end. Thanks for listening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amy. I'm 18, and my house is a real dump. There's nothing in it worth stealing, but my mom still locks the door. One time, I went to school and forgot my house keys, and she had left for a couple of days to visit her friend. I had to live outside, and she didn't give a damn. But it completely changed my life, and now I'm going to tell you how. It wasn't the first time that Mom had left. The previous time, she had left me without even money for food, but at least I got to sleep in my own bed. This time, all I could do was lie on the porch by the door. The only relative I have is an uncle, but his number was out of service. After school, I was sitting and thinking about who else I could call when I noticed that the most notorious school heartthrob was staring at me again. I immediately felt uneasy. For several years, Carter, that's his name, and his friends on the football team had bullied me. They made fun of how I dressed, where I lived. They called my mom a loser and me a bum. Recently, it had stopped, and Carter started looking at me more, but I didn't know why. I knew I might like it. I usually got attention from guys who didn't know how poor I was and didn't notice the holes in my clothes at first. But it was hard for me to imagine that Carter liked me. He only dated popular girls. I headed towards home. I had been wandering for about an hour when Carter suddenly drove up beside me in his car. He told me that my shack was still around the next corner. So where was I going? I didn't answer. Then he offered to give me a ride. Again, I didn't answer. I felt that it would be better if I didn't get in with him. Then he revved his engine a little, put it in park, and got out. He spoke to me kindly, which I didn't even know he was capable of, and told me that I had nothing to fear and that he would just give me a ride. To get him off my back, I agreed and told him to take me home. The car was comfortable, and I relaxed. My favorite song came on, and I closed my eyes. Then he put his hand on my knee. The snob was trying to humiliate me again. I was terrified and even had the thought to open the door and jump out. But he laughed and said, "Relax. You're not my type. I wanted to make sure that you were awake." Once I had calmed down, I told Carter about the stupid situation with the locked door. He thought for a minute and then offered to let me spend the night at his house. I thought about it and thought some more, and then hesitantly said, "Okay, fine. I'll stay at your place tonight." He didn't seem as bad to me as I had thought before. He took me to his room. I had never seen such luxury. Carter first suggested that I take a shower. I locked the shower door, hoping it would stop him if he decided to come in. I was still afraid that he might want to take advantage of me. When I got out of the shower, I saw that I was right to feel that way. Carter's mouth hung open when he saw me. I knew what he was thinking, and I wanted to run away again. But he settled into a chair across from me and let me have the bed. We lay in silence. and then he asked when my mother would be coming back. I told him I didn't know for sure. Then he said that I could stay as long as I wanted. I didn't even know how to react. He started asking about my family, what I like to do, what I love. When I was talking about how Dad left us, he suddenly laid down next to me. I immediately jumped up, but he said he wouldn't bother me. It was just that he couldn't hear from the armchair. Plus, it wasn't as comfortable there as on the bed. I don't remember how, but I fell asleep. When I woke up, Carter was sitting on the chair across from me and looking at me. "Well, aren't you a sleepyhead?" he said. It was 11 o'clock! I had slept through school for the first time! I quickly started packing my stuff, but it turned out that Carter had already planned our day. After a simply divine breakfast, he took me to a store. He told me that I could choose whatever I wanted. I didn't believe he was serious. After all, I was used to having to choose between ripped jeans and a worn dress. I hesitated to accept such a gift, so Carter said that he would choose everything himself. He offered me an incredibly extravagant dress, which you could only wear to the Met Gala, so I took over from there. We bought so many things: dresses, a jacket, shoes, and even underwear, and a new phone. I had never been so happy. It was like Christmas, and Carter was my own personal Santa. I couldn't even believe that this was the same guy who had terrified me for so many years. And then we went for a drive. We drove 200 miles, listening to music and chatting. And then we stopped in a field, and he started taking pictures of me. And then we kissed for the first time. And not only kissed. When we got into the car, he took me back to his place. The next day, when we came to school, he took me by the hand, in front of everyone. I was so embarrassed and avoided him the rest of the day. I couldn't believe this was really happening. I was absolutely not a match for him. Wasn't he embarrassed to be seen with me in front of his friends? And then I got a message from my mom that she was back. I didn't want to go home, but I had no more reason to stay with Carter. But when I told him, he didn't want to let me go. He said that he wanted me to live with him. Period. For almost a month now, I've been going back to my house only occasionally, and the rest of the time I spend at Carter's house. Mom tells me all the time that he's playing with me, that it's all a big game for rich people, to take girls from the street and make princesses out of them, and that soon he would get tired of me and would throw me out, and I would be left with a broken heart. I'm really worried that that's going to happen someday. That was my story. I live with him for now. What do you think about this?